To walk or not to walk? That is the question. Ever since living in Spain, I have been hit by a barrage of new cultural norms that had always seemed strange to me. Remember, I'm an American from the United States, and so today we're going to talk about the differences between Europe and the US when it comes to the walking culture, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm Mikel, and this is what I learned today. Let's start with the good. In most European cities, walking is normal. It's part of daily life. I walk to the supermarket, I walk to the bank, I walk to the metro, I walk to the bars, I walk to my doctor, I walk and talk, I walk, I walk to relax and to exercise. And it's just not me, it's everyone, even those with cars, young, old, and in between. And a lot of that has to do with how cities are built, especially in Europe. A large study called the Pasta Project, which looked at cities like Barcelona, London, Zurich, Vienna, and Antwerp, found that people walk more when their city is compact, connected, and safe. In Zurich, for example, over 30% of all daily trips are made on foot, thanks to the mixed land use, short distances, and great public transport. In Europe, walking is also culturally valued and part of the social fabric. It's just not something for people who can't afford a car to do. It's something everyone does. In Austria, 80% of survey respondents agreed with the statement, "Most people in my neighborhood walk." And when people believe walking is a common thing to do, they walk even more. And let me tell you, as an American living in Spain, I can verify that. At first, I was very against this idea of walking around to be social with no specific goal or destination to go to, but as I connected more with the town I lived in, the more I became more accepting of the social norm and have even found it relaxing and enjoyable. Yes, I know, people can change. Walking in Europe often means going through historic town centers, local markets, or social plazas. These places aren't just functional. They're beautiful. Streets are made for people, not just for cars. There are benches, fountains, and street cafes, parks for dogs, parks for children, water fountains to drink from, and even water fountains for dogs to drink too. The streets are greener with big trees and many historic architecture to stop and look at. In countries like Germany and the Netherlands, people often see walking as a right and a social habit, not just transport. Children walk to school, older people go for walks in the park, even business meetings sometimes can include a walk. Here we go, the bad. In the US, walking is often seen as something you do when you have no other choice. You heard me right. And the numbers support that idea. According to the US National Household Travel Survey, walking made up around 10.5 to 11.9% of all trips between 2009 and 2017. So we can say about 11% on average. And if you include biking or cycling, you get a total around 12% for what's called active transportation. But things have changed in recent years. In a 2022 survey, walking dropped even lower, making up just 7% of all daily trips, while cars, vans, and SUVs made up a huge 75%. This means that vast majority of Americans are still driving, even for short journeys. Other studies that include walking, biking, and public transport together show that the active travel in the US ranges between 8 and 12%. Remember, active travel means walking or cycling, depending on the year and how the data was collected, but either way, it's a very small fraction of daily movement. Let's compare it with the EU. In many European countries like the UK, Germany, France, the Netherlands, Denmark, and Sweden, the numbers are very different. Walking alone accounts for about 20 to 26% of all trips. Now, that's 2 to 3 times more than in the US. Take Germany for an example. Studies show that Germans walk for around 22 to 25% of their trips. And then when you add cycling, the number goes even higher. These countries are not just walking more, they're designing cities to make it easier and safer to walk. And when you look at places like Paris, in the city center, about 53% of all trips are made on foot. Cars make up just 4%. The rest is mostly cycling and public transport. That's a dramatic contrast to the US, where cities are often built around the car. So what does this tell us? It shows that walking isn't just about personal choice. It's also about how cities are designed. Much of Europe, walking is normal, safe, and encouraged, while in the U.S., walking is still something many people do when they have to. Why? Part of the answer is urban design, how a city is built. Most U.S. cities were built around the car. Streets are wide, blocks are long, and shops are far, far away. You can't just walk to the supermarket or to your child's school. Also, I can confirm this, public transport in the U.S. is often weak. I lived in Orlando, Florida. I lived in Austin, Texas. I lived in Abilene, Texas. I lived in Houston, Texas. And I can tell you, public transport is not very good. It's weak. That's just a fact, all right? Public transports are weak, like I said, in cities like Los Angeles or Houston. Many areas have no sidewalks. Let me repeat that again. Many areas have no sidewalks, no bus stops nearby, and no safe way to cross busy roads. Culturally, walking in the U.S. is not always respected. In many places, if you walk, especially as an adult, people might assume you are poor or homeless or even suspicious. In some areas, especially for Black Americans, walking can be risky. A 2022 study showed that Black pedestrians face higher risks of police stops and are more likely to be injured in traffic. There's also a class issue. The poorest 20% of Americans do most of the walking. Let me repeat that again. The poorest 20% of Americans do most of the walking, but often in unsafe neighborhoods without parks or sidewalks. So in many US cities, walking is not seen as freedom. It's seen as failure. The ugly. Not walking has a price, and it's high. The WHO, or the World Health Organization, recommends at least 150 minutes of physical activity per week. Walking is one of the easiest ways to reach that. But when cities make it hard to walk, people suffer. In the EU, physical inactivity costs about 80 billion euros per year in loss in productivity, healthcare, and early death. In the US, the numbers are worse. Obesity rates are at 42%, and walking rates are the lowest in states with the highest poverty. But it's just not about health, it's also about the environment. Let me just go back quickly about the whole obesity thing in the US. It's true, and I lived it through my life experience. Americans just don't walk. It's not because they want to, they just don't. They can't. The cities are built horribly. The public transportation, like I mentioned earlier, it's not a safe place to walk. I remember going with my daughter to Florida, and we wanted to go for a walk, and we almost got hit by incoming traffic because there were no labeled sidewalks for people to walk. So that's just a thing. And when we talk about the environment, walking is a zero emission activity. When people walk more, of course, they use fewer cars, which helps reduce air pollution, CO2, and traffic deaths. For example, if all short car trips in EU cities were replaced by walking or cycling, it could cut traffic by 25% and save thousands of lives each year. All right? So, what does it mean culturally? Because that's what I said, right? The culture of walking. In Europe, walking has a long history. People walked across countries on pilgrimages, like the Camino de Santiago in Spain. In Germany, people followed promenades and forest paths as a way to connect with nature. In the 19th century, romantic thinkers like Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Goethe saw walking as a way to explore the self and the world. Artists and philosophers like Walter Benjamin walked city streets to reflect on society. They were called flaneurs, or city wanderers. In fact, walking was even used as art. In modern times, artists like Richard Long and Francis Alice created art by walking and recording their experiences. In the US, there was also once a tradition of meaningful walking. Writers like Henry David Thoreau wrote about walking as freedom, but today walking has lost that special role. In many American cities, walking is seen as what you do when your car breaks down. Europe has kept the culture of walking as a human right, joy, and a way of being, while the US sadly walking has turned into a sign of poverty. What can we learn? In Europe, walking is part of everyday life and culture. Cities are built for it. People expect it. It's safe and normal. In the U.S., walking is often hard, dangerous, and looked down on. Cities were built for cars, and that affects public health, the planet. Both sides can learn from each other. The U.S. can learn from Europe's urban design, and Europe can keep improving access in poor and rural areas. And what we all need to remember is walking is not just a way to move, it's a way to live better. Let me just say it like this. Let me conclude with this. When I first came to Spain, I was very skeptical about the walking culture. Everyone walks in where I live. I live in a small town. Everyone walks. You walk everywhere. I walk everywhere. And at first, I saw it as such an inconvenience, right? Because I'm tired, I don't feel like walking. And specifically where I live, there are a lot of hills. So you're either walking up a hill or you're either walking down a hill. But throughout the years, I've learned to embrace this culture, and I couldn't live any other way. I told you when I went to the U.S. to visit my family, I wanted to go for walks because it felt so connected with that. I felt so connected with walking. And so we're in the summer, we're going out for walks more and enjoying the walks. The weather is great to go for a walk. And so I accept this walking culture that Europeans have. I love it. And I hope that the U.S. can learn more about this walking culture and apply it more to their lives. Maybe decrease the obesity rate, which is at 42% in the United States. So thank you for listening on this podcast today. If you like the episode, go for a walk. Enjoy your walk. If you are European, I know you're already walking. If you're an American, go for a walk. You'll enjoy. I'm Mikel, and this is what I learned today. Bye.